This topic is economics. The first word is acquire. Acquire. It's a verb. It has two meanings. Number one, to obtain something, usually by buying it or being given it, but often the means is not specified. Number two, to gain a new characteristic or ability. Usually it develops over time. Let's see the word family. First we have the noun acquisition. That means the act of acquiring something, or a thing that somebody acquires, especially a large thing like a company or a piece of land. We have the adjective acquisitive. That means wanting to get and have a lot of possessions. This is a formal adjective. We don't use it a lot when we speak, but you might see it in written texts. Let's see some examples. The corporation acquired several small businesses in the city. How did the museum acquire all those famous paintings? She has acquired strong skills in German. The next word is affluent. Affluent. It's an adjective. Affluent means having a lot of money or possessions. It's basically a formal way of saying rich. The noun is affluence, and that means the state of being affluent. Here's the little usage tip. This is a false friend in some languages. In some languages like Spanish and French, there's a similar adjective and it's related to rivers. In Old English, that was also the case, but in modern day English, the adjective just means rich or wealthy. Let's see some collocations. We have an affluent person, an affluent family, an affluent country, and an affluent neighborhood. Some financial advisors only work with very affluent individuals. There are often good public schools in affluent neighborhoods. Now we have the verb allocate. Allocate. This means to give something to someone or something for a specific purpose, often after an official decision. The noun is allocation. That means the act of allocating, or the amount that is allocated. Here's a usage tip. This verb can be used in a few different sentence structures. First we have to allocate something to somebody or something. For example, we allocated more money to the project. You can also say to allocate something for something. For example, we allocated more money for the project. And you can say to allocate somebody or something, something. So you can say, we allocated the project more money. These all mean the same thing. Don't worry, you don't need to memorize them or use them all, but you should be aware that there are different structures. I need to allocate more of my free time to study. The government allocated $200 million for schools. We waited a long time to be allocated seats on the plane. Next we have asset. Asset. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, something that belongs to an individual or a business which has value or the power to earn money. They're normally things like real estate, money in the bank, or financial investments. Number 2, a person or thing that is valuable or useful. Here's a usage tip. For the second meaning, it is sometimes used in this structure: to be an asset to somebody or something. For example, a new park would be an asset to this city. That means that a new park would be valuable to the city. It would be a nice thing for the city to have. The company's assets are worth $5 billion. Resourcefulness is a big asset if you work for a startup. That means that resourcefulness is a useful characteristic for a startup. I think George would be an asset to the accounting department. That means I think George would be a good person to work for the accounting department. He would add value. Next we have boom. Boom. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, a fast increase in economic activity. Number 2, an increase in the popularity of something, such as a sport or a type of music. The verb is also boom. If a business or an industry or an economy is booming, it's growing quickly. The adjective is booming, which means growing or expanding quickly. Here's a usage tip. It is often followed by in. This year has seen a boom in smartphone sales. And here are some collocations. We have an economic boom, a property boom, a boom period, and we also have the phrase boom and bust. That's when a period of fast economic growth is followed by a sudden period of decline. There has been a recent boom in the real estate market. The restaurant industry always does well during a boom period. There was an aerobics boom in the 1980s. Next we have boost. Boost. It's a verb. It means to improve something or make something increase. There are 2 nouns. First we have boost. A boost is an increase or something that helps something improve or increase. And we have booster. Booster has a few different meanings, but generally it's something that improves something. We need to boost our sales if we want to make a profit this year. That movie really boosted the actor's career. Next we have commodity. Commodity. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, a product or raw material that can be bought, traded, or sold, and is often used in the production of other goods. Often used when discussing economics. Number 2, a useful thing or quality. Here are some collocations. We have an agricultural commodity, a basic commodity. A basic commodity is something that's commonly used. A precious commodity, a scarce commodity. Scarce means there's not very much of it available. And finally, commodity prices. So what commodities cost. Recently, the cost of rice, oil, and other basic commodities has increased dramatically. Coffee was a scarce commodity during the war. Time is a precious commodity that we often undervalue. The next word is consumer. Consumer. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, a person who buys and uses goods or services. Number two, a person, organization, country, etc. that uses something, especially fuel, energy, or natural resources. Let's see the word family. First we have the verb consume, which generally means to use something. Then we have the noun consumption. That means the act of consuming or the amount that is consumed. And we have the adjective consumable. That means able or meant to be consumed. Here are some collocations. First we have a consumer group. A consumer group is an organization that protects consumer rights. Next we have consumer debt, consumer demand, consumer goods, and consumer spending. Those cars are far too expensive for the average consumer. Economists are worried because consumer spending has dropped recently. Australia is a major producer and consumer of coal. The next word is consumerism. Consumerism. It's an uncountable noun. This means the belief that it is good for individuals or society to buy and use a large quantity of goods and services. It is often used disapprovingly. The adjective is consumerist, which just means related to consumerism. Many people are concerned by rising consumerism around the world. Green consumerism refers to a situation in which consumers want to buy products and services that have been produced in an environmentally friendly way. Next we have the adjective corporate. Corporate. Corporate means relating to a corporation. And the noun in the word family is corporation. In case you're thinking, what's a corporation? Well, a corporation is a large company or a group of companies that act as a single organization. Let's see some collocations. First we have the corporate world. That essentially means the world of big business. We also have a corporate customer or client, a corporate loan, corporate culture, and corporate finance. He worked in the corporate world for 20 years before deciding to become a teacher. The term corporate identity refers to a company's image, or how a company presents itself to society. The next word is downturn. Downturn. It's a countable noun. It means a decrease in business or economic activity. Here's a usage tip. It is often followed by in. For example, there has been a downturn in sales in recent months. The country is currently experiencing an economic downturn. Local business owners are concerned about the downturn in the tourism industry. The next word is estate. Estate. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Firstly, it can mean all of someone's money or property, especially when they die. It can also mean a large area of land in the country that is usually owned by one person or family. To give you a visual idea of that second meaning, in England, for example, a house on an estate often looks a bit like the one in the picture. Some collocations. You can say to leave one's estate to somebody. That means to leave everything that you own to somebody when you die. Next we have estate tax. That's another term for inheritance tax. Then a family estate and a country estate. When she died, she left her entire estate to her cat. He has a lot of money because his family used to own a large estate with hundreds of hectares of farmland. Now we have exceed. Exceed. It's a verb. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, to be more than a particular number or amount. Number two, to do more than what a rule or law allows you to do. Let's see the word family. We have the noun excess, which is an amount of something that is more than necessary or reasonable. We have the adjective excessive, which means more than is necessary or reasonable. The adverb of that is excessively. And we also have the adverb exceedingly, which means extremely. Some collocations. We have to far exceed. To far exceed means to exceed something by a lot. We also have to exceed the speed limit. In other words, to drive too fast. To exceed one's authority, which means to do more than what someone in that job is normally allowed to do. And finally, to exceed expectations. That means to go beyond what is expected in a positive way. The total cost of the renovations will not exceed $70,000. Rents are high at the moment because the demand for housing far exceeds supply. She was exceeding the speed limit by 10 miles per hour. The judge was dismissed for exceeding his authority. This word is expertise. Expertise. It's an uncountable noun. It means high-level knowledge or skills in a particular subject. Let's see the word family. First we have the noun expert. An expert is a person with this knowledge or these skills. Then we have the adjective expert, and that means involving great knowledge or skill. And the adverb of that is expertly. Here's a usage tip. This is often followed by in. For example, she has expertise in website design. A collocation is an area of expertise. That means a subject or activity that a person can have skills in. I'd very much like to help you, but I'm afraid marketing is not my area of expertise. These consultants have considerable expertise in dealing with workplace conflict. The next word is household. Household. It's a countable noun. It means all the people who live together in a house or apartment. The adjective is also household. That means relating to a home or the people in it. In 2016, the average household in Australia had 2.6 people. Purchasing a house can be too expensive for many single-income households. The next word is impoverished. Impoverished. It's an adjective. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, very poor. Number 2, made worse in quality. Let's see the word family. We have the verb impoverish. That means to make somebody poor or to make something worse in quality. And we have the noun impoverishment. That's the act of impoverishing or the state of being impoverished. In the picture, you can see an impoverished neighborhood. The charity aims to help impoverished communities in multiple countries. The soil is so impoverished that almost nothing will grow in it now. This word is infrastructure. Infrastructure. It's a countable and uncountable noun. It means the basic systems and structures that a country or organization needs to function properly, such as transport, electricity supply, and water supply. The adjective is infrastructural. Here's a usage tip. It is almost never used as a countable noun. In other words, you will rarely hear an infrastructure or infrastructures. So technically, it is both countable and uncountable, but we normally use it as an uncountable noun. Sometimes governments increase infrastructure spending in an attempt to boost the economy. The company decided to invest $20 million to upgrade its communications infrastructure. Now we have livelihood. Livelihood. It's a countable and uncountable noun. It means the way someone earns money in order to live. Fishing is this man's livelihood. Here are some collocations. To depend or rely on something for one's livelihood. To earn a or one's livelihood. To lose one's livelihood. It's difficult to earn a livelihood as a musician. Most people in the town depend on tourism for their livelihood. Many farmers have lost their livelihoods because of the drought. You can say livelihood or livelihoods after there. This word is output. Output. It is also a countable and uncountable noun. This means the amount of something, so goods or services, produced by a country, company, factory, person, etc. A little usage tip. It is almost never used as a countable noun. In other words, you will rarely hear an output or outputs. And here are some collocations. We have agricultural output, economic output, industrial output, and manufacturing output. The country's economic output grew by 5% last year. Manufacturing output in this region has declined in recent years. The factory's current output is about 20,000 units a month. Now we have a verb. This is prosper. Prosper. To prosper means to develop in a successful way, especially financially. The adjective is prosperous, and that means successful or rich. The noun is prosperity, which is the state of being prosperous. I know this won't mean something to everyone, but if you watch Star Trek, this is the Vulcan salute, and people usually say, "Live long and prosper," when they do it. To prosper isn't always about money. It can just mean to develop in a positive way. He seems to be prospering since he moved to the country and found a less stressful job. The economy prospered under the previous government. If you want your business to prosper, you should develop your marketing skills. Now we have revenue. Revenue. It's an uncountable and plural noun. It means the money that a business or government regularly receives. Here are a few usage tips. Number 1. Normally it is uncountable. Revenue. But sometimes the plural form is used. Revenues. The meaning stays the same. Number 2. It does not mean profit. Profit equals revenue minus costs. Number 3. We do not use it to talk about what individuals earn. The money that a person regularly receives is income. Here are a few collocations. First we have advertising revenue. TV stations and companies like Facebook and Google receive advertising revenue. And then we have annual revenue and tax revenue. Tax revenue is what governments receive from taxpayers. The company's expected revenue this year is $70 million. Most of Google's revenue is advertising revenue. Tax revenues increased this year thanks to new corporate taxes. Next we have scarcity. Scarcity. It's a countable and uncountable noun. It means a situation in which there is not enough of something, or something is not easy to find or obtain. The adjective is scarce. If something is scarce, there's not very much of it available. The adverb is scarcely. That means only just, or hardly. A little usage tip. It is often followed by of. For example, there is currently a scarcity of skilled workers. The concept of scarcity is important in the study of economics. Water scarcity is a major problem in drier regions of the world. Food scarcities can lead to social conflict and riots. A riot is a situation in which a large group of people behave violently. Next we have sector. Sector is a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, an area of activity, particularly in a country's economy. Number 2, a part of a geographic area, particularly one that is under military control. The adjective is sectoral. Here are some collocations. By the way, you don't have to use the with sector, but we often do. So we have the agricultural sector, the manufacturing sector, the service sector, the private sector, the public sector, the banking sector, and the finance sector. Here are some examples. Agriculture used to be a major part of the country's economy, but it is now half the size of the service sector. He used to work in the public sector, but now he works in the corporate sector. After World War II, Berlin was divided into 4 sectors. Now we have slump. Slump. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, a sudden decrease in sales, prices, profits, etc. Number 2, a period when an industry or economy is doing very badly, particularly with a lot of unemployment. The verb is to slump. That means to suddenly decrease in price, number, etc. Here's a usage tip. It is often followed by in. For example, there has recently been a slump in book sales. The recent slump in oil prices has caused some volatility on the share market. People are more concerned about holding on to their jobs during an economic slump. The next word is stakeholder. Stakeholder is a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, someone who has an important connection with something, normally a business or organization, and is therefore affected by its failure or success. Number 2, someone who has invested money in a business. Here's a usage tip. Occasionally this is used interchangeably with shareholder, but the word shareholder is more specific. A shareholder owns shares in a company or business. A stakeholder doesn't necessarily own shares in something. Large companies tend to have many stakeholders, including employees, directors, shareholders, the government, and unions. Our manager often forgets that the local government is an important stakeholder. All of the business's stakeholders lost money. Next we have subsidy. Subsidy. It's a countable noun. This means money that is given by a government or organization to reduce the cost of producing or providing goods or services in order to keep prices low. Let's see the word family. First we have the verb to subsidize. That means to give a subsidy. Then we have the adjective subsidized. That means partially paid for by a government or organization. And finally we have the noun subsidization, which is the act of providing subsidies. Here's a usage tip. It is normally used in the plural, subsidies. Here are a few collocations. Agricultural subsidies, export subsidies, government subsidies, housing subsidies, and public subsidies. Agricultural subsidies represent a large part of the EU budget. The transport system would not survive without public subsidies. The Arts Centre received a subsidy from the local government. Now we have trend. Trend. This is a countable noun. It means a general tendency or development in a certain direction. Let's see the word family. First we have the verb to trend. That means to change or develop in a certain direction, or to be discussed a lot on social media. Then we have the adjective trending, and that means to be popular on social media. Another adjective is trendy, which means popular or fashionable. The adverb is trendily, and that means in a fashionable way. And finally, we have the noun trendiness, which means the quality of being trendy. Here are some collocations. The latest trend, an alarming trend, an economic trend, a growing trend, a new or recent trend, a downward trend, and an upward trend. If these economic trends continue, unemployment will rise quickly. The growing trend is for people to marry later in life. He spends too much money on electronics because he insists on following the latest trends. And finally, we have uptick. Uptick. It's a countable noun. An uptick is a small increase or improvement in the level or value of something. The arrow is pointing to an uptick in the graph. A little usage tip. It is often followed by in. For example, there was an uptick in bond prices last week. The recent uptick in economic activity will likely lead to the creation of more jobs. Investors are happy because the share market is showing an uptick. People are currently very concerned about the country's economy. The country was recently prospering during a long boom period, but it's now suffering from an economic downturn. The recent slump in commodity prices hasn't helped because the country exports a lot of raw materials. It is feared that many people will lose their livelihoods. As frequently happens during a recession, it is likely that the most impoverished communities will suffer the most. Despite a decade of what some economists described as rampant consumerism, it is clear that consumers are now generally spending a lot less. Even rather affluent households are hesitant to spend money because they don't know what the future holds. Because of this hesitancy, the corporate sector is also suffering. The government is a stakeholder in the country's large companies because it receives a lot of money from them in the form of tax revenue. Some large companies have been acquiring lots of smaller ones because the owners are selling them at discount prices. Economists fear that there will also be a slump in the housing market, which is concerning for homeowners who don't want to see their mortgages exceed the market prices of their homes. It is hoped that an economic uptick will happen soon, but it's likely that current trends will continue if the government doesn't intervene. Various suggestions have been put forward. Some economists have said that the government should allocate more funds to infrastructure spending. Others say that it should provide more subsidies to the agricultural and manufacturing sectors to boost economic output. Another suggestion is to make changes to the tax system. For example, some people are in favor of introducing an estate tax for wealthy individuals. In other words, people who have a lot of assets. Because there is a scarcity of skilled labor, some have also suggested investing more in education and training to help workers develop expertise in certain areas.
you.